What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff, arm yourselves, life stuff. We're talking about the miserable world of parasocialization today, following a surge of people starting in on it again. And I'm not sure why. Everything happens in waves, but I'm wondering what set this one off. Maybe on that noospheric level, people can sense we have backed out of aggression mode. We picked up quite a few lessons, which is what we were in it for, but staying in that state constantly over a long period of time is exhausting. So maybe people can sense this is the time to try. I'm not sure, but parasocialization is a tumor and you need to nip it in the bud early. And we're also talking a bit about content creation today because that's something all of you should be doing. Even if you're doing it just occasionally as a hobby, it will teach you a lot. It'll also teach you firsthand a bit about what we're discussing today. You think these sorts of things can't happen with small channels, they can. And in fact, the smaller your operation, the worse this shit is going to be. Both in the parasocial sites you'll be attracting, and in your inability, your unawareness of how to deal with these things. I think in this stage of the internet, people feel lonely and persecuted. Anything you could possibly think for any possible reason is wrong, and it's probably evil, and if you dare make the mistake of stating your position, having your opinion publicly, lots of people are going to let you know that. And despite the way we live on the internet, the fact we're exposed to this sort of shit constantly, I think average Joe, not even Joe dipshit necessarily, isn't prepared for that whip crack of the mob. Both how many people can be on you so quickly and how nasty and threatening they'll be. And then you add to that, the standard online discourse is becoming increasingly Reddity, in the sense it's not enough just to agree or disagree. Everything is a side, and one side must win, and one side must lose. And winning entails not just being more popular, but also the destruction of all other points of view. Suppression at minimum. So people on the internet these days are kind of weird. Everybody's a bit ideological. Everybody feels and acts like guerrilla fighters. Constant paranoia and combativeness. The internet right now is the best argument for the dark forest hypothesis I can think of. Joe Internet feels constantly attacked and in turn is developing this urge to attack in turn. And then you can't even retreat into the real world. Jesus, that's even harsher. So I think Joe Internet, average Joe Internet, is looking for a tribe, is looking for a side to fight on, looking for a gang to join. They're looking for a place they can be safe, something to believe in, so they can have an identity and feel validated. In that way, I think it's also an attention thing. People want to feel like they matter as individuals, but despite the pervasiveness of main character syndrome, nobody today lives in an individualistic world. It's all about what side you're on. But the way ideology is presented today still makes you want to feel recognized as an individual, because what you're inundated with is ideology presented as individualism. Now, none of what we've just discussed is totally what's happening is exactly what's happening. I'm trying to make sense of why parasocialization has become so prominent. In any case, if you're a content creator, and you should be, I'll state it again, you should be creating some kind of content for the experience. You aren't an individual. In your audience's eyes, it's almost like you're a mannequin marketing an identity. The people who watch you and like you don't see you as a person, they see you as a way of being they would like to buy. And I think for these sorts of people, it's also a proof of concept. If you can be this way, then they also can be this way, which is something an increasing number of people want because on the ground level internet, soldier level internet, you can't be anyway. If you decide one day you're going to try to be yourself, now you are on other people's radar as a target, as an enemy that needs to be dealt with, but you're alone and you have no resources. So you're inviting that whip crack of the mob, of some ideology singling you out and striking you. And when I say ideology, I don't even mean politics. I mean a collection of memes that has formed itself into a group or infected a group. And when you're attacked by these ideologies, though you're marked as an enemy, I don't think they're even looking at you as an enemy in that way. That would be too validating. That would give yourself too much credence. You're treated as an enemy, but more you're treated as food. The mob needs to eat something, and when you try to be yourself as an individual, no content creation, no resources, you're an easy meal for these ideologies to sustain themselves. If they, quotes, prove you wrong, which is not what they're doing, they also, in their minds, quotes, prove themselves right and can keep the engine running. So when you are creating content and getting anywhere, and I don't just mean channels or creators with huge audiences, I mean you can have 200 subscribers and that's still, to certain sorts of people, getting somewhere. Worse in those cases, worse for you. And then people will attach themselves to you, or try to. And I don't think anyone who does this goes into it thinking about what they're doing, but what they're doing is a bunch of things. At the base level, I think what they're doing is trying to find any ground they can stand on they'd like to stand on. And they'll always try to make it seem like you two are so similar, but you aren't similar. They aren't seeking or supporting you, they are looking for that ground. You just so happen to be, in their mind, the most accessible route or ladder to reach that ground. If it weren't you, it would be somebody else, and it will be, and it almost certainly has been. And this is one of the reasons parasocial types bug me so much. They always frame it as a positive interaction, or trying to be nice, or trying to have a conversation or something with somebody so similar. But in my experience, I think I've been doing this 8 or 9... Jesus, I think it's 8 years? Ugh. That's never the case. It is never at its core positive. From when I had 5 subscribers to now. I looked, it's almost 9 years. It's always the opening gambit to what they want. And this is a situation, even if you tried to give them what they want, which years ago is something I would do, it never ever ends positive. If you engage in any way and continue to engage, You are walking toward problems, always. Now, what this is some kind of ritual or game, and it's complicated, but there are rules, stats, variables. Let's look at it from the simplest flowchart we can manage. In trying to get in with you at all, their ultimate goal is validating themselves. These people want to feel like they are somebody. They want to feel like they matter. I think ultimately what they're going for is the exact same thing content creators are going for. We're going after validation too, but our methods are different. Creators hunt attention by doing things and trying to get the mob's attention. That's how we validate. Parasocial types try to get that attention by focusing on an individual they think they can get it from. Unfortunately for you, that person is you. It's a wide versus narrow thing. It's also an effort thing, and that's where some of these rules or variables come into play. Because if you are the creator, people who try to get in with you always act according to a few patterns. They think they can get your attention, one, because they feel you two are similar, two, they feel you owe them, and this operates in a few ways. At the most basic level, I think in their minds, because they are giving you their attention, they feel they are owed attention in turn. Some of them will try to use money. That's one of the reasons I was hesitant about, for a long time, about doing Patreon. Mistaken values are another aspect of this. I think on some level, people think it's unfair that some people get more attention than other people do. Because they believe, well, they're drawing from the idea that everybody is inherently valuable, and that's what they're using to justify to themselves this feeling they are owed, but they don't extend that to anybody else, because why would you? That rule, that value is bullshit. In their minds, they are building a case for why you owe them attention. Attention they are not getting elsewhere or they don't know how to get otherwise. It's parasitic. They want what you have without learning how to do what you do, or without figuring out what they can do. And this is why, by the way, I say it's worse if you have a small channel. The less attention from the crowd you are getting, the more valuable they feel their attention is for you. Now, here's where the basic flowchart begins, or the different routes this can take, but I still think of it more as a flowchart because if this is happening at all, there is no way this can go other than problems. Let's start with not giving them what they want. In the absolute best case, they fuck off and stop bothering you, and their approaching you at all was the highest, greatest problem you're going to deal with from this situation. Now, that doesn't usually happen, but status quo is the best you can get. Now, in other instances, people will throw fits, they'll try to fuck up what you're doing, and none of that is fun, but it's still leagues better than giving anything. You need to understand dealing with parasocial people is a lose-lose. So once one of these parasites has engaged you, your goal is to lose as little as possible. So if they throw a fit, they get one of your videos brigaded, good. That's still not as bad as it would be if you give anything. Now let's go into the giving side. If you give anything, any amount of attention, any amount of validation, something even as small as acknowledging the person exists, you embolden them. You make them think they are right to think or feel whatever they're thinking or feeling. Now, not only will you see more of them, and you will see more of them, they're going to get testier. Because remember, you don't matter in this situation. The position you're standing on is what matters. They're trying to prove to themselves and then others they they matter as much as you do. They should matter as much as you do, and then they should matter more than you do. With these sorts of people, it is never just sounding off or engaging or consuming the content. You can separate these sorts of people from other people who will be in your viewership in the way they are always worming closer to you, trying to prove to themselves, to you, and to other people that they matter as much as you do. And they do that by trying to weasel their way onto your level. Because it'll start with these seemingly positive minor interactions. Then it'll turn into longer but still positive interactions, seemingly positive. And then you reach this point they expect to be listened to. They've gotten to a point they think they deserve to be heard just because they have something to say. And I think this is what separates content creators from these parasocial types. When you're the one creating content and you start from nothing, you get it drilled into your head. What you have to say doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if it's something that shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's something that should matter. If you were Albert Einstein today inventing E equals MC squared and posting it online, people probably, quotes, should listen to that, but they don't. And that's an important lesson to learn. Initially, it's a reality check that opens up into an opportunity to learn how to make people who don't care care. Versus these parasocial types, they expect to be cared about. They expect to be listened to. And this is where the shift starts happening. Or if you're new to this, when you'll probably first start noticing it. The first thing you'll notice is these people increasingly take up more and more of your time. You'll notice they are forcing you to match their energy and interests. And on that interpersonal level, at this point, if you're still giving, they have power over you, but they haven't proven it to themselves enough to get nasty yet. And some of these parasocial types start nasty, but they're a different animal. It's the same game, but the way the game plays out is different. Then, after this stage, they start giving you commands. They think, or at this point, they think they matter enough that you should do as they say solely based on the fact that they are the ones saying it. And if they've gotten to this point, then really that's your fault. You have given them every reason to think that you should listen to them. You've listened to everything that they've said thus far. They've called the tune and you danced to the jig. What is it to take it a little bit further now? And then if you're still listening to them by this point and doing as they say, they get nasty. They're giving you orders, they're talking about nothing and expecting to be listened to, they're insulting you, they're bratty, they're brat kids. And actually, in terms of behavior, I've noticed Gen X is like this, by and large, and I wonder how that happened. You can see this sort of behavior in every age group, every generation, but that whole generation is like this. It's one of the reasons I don't like them very much. Anyway, parasocial types, this is the peak of their validation. They've basically taken your spot without actually being able to take your spot, though in some cases they do actually take your spot This is one of the reasons you don't collaborate with people. And you've officially niced your way into misery. Now, you can still get out of this, but it's going to be more difficult. And it's going to be more difficult because by this point, you have built their case. They feel totally justified in acting this way. Meaning, when you put a stop to it now, they're going to have a meltdown. You need to remember these are not normal, as healthy as anyone can be, people. You've taken away the one thing they want and they feel they deserve. They're going to have a meltdown. Anything they can do to fuck up your life to the highest extent they think they can is what's going to happen or what they're going to try. And they won't stop because they feel justified in what they're doing. They feel wronged. They feel betrayed. And you should never let it get this far. Mainly because this is going to happen. What's happening here is if you had tried to stop it, even if you don't try to stop it, remember, they want the pillar you're standing on. If you don't put a stop to it, they'll invent a reason to feel betrayed, to justify what they've wanted to do to you from the very beginning, which is express their power against somebody in a way they can feel validated in doing so. It's all about validation. And we're talking about this as if I have the entire progression and system mapped out. I don't. This parasocialization process is complicated and tricky. I don't have it all figured out. What I have are the patterns in the ways these people act. Why exactly they do these things, I'm not sure. The main patterns are they want validation, and instead of teaching themselves to go out and get it, they get it by weaseling their way into being able to affect you to increasing extents. And it is never, ever a good thing. And it stinks because in terms of humanity, maybe this ritual has existed for a long time. It probably has, but with the internet, it's everywhere now. We don't understand it well enough, even people who are dealing with it. And there aren't enough words and distinguishers. Because this entire video I've been calling these people parasocial types, but to me, a degree of parasocialization is a good thing or a fun thing. There is a way to do this right, and there are people you do it right with, you enjoy it with, but then you have these sorts of people who fuck up the entire thing. And that's frustrating because once you've figured out how to spot them, you can spot them instantly. But if you interact positively with a non-problem person, the people who will be problem people, they already are problem people, will take that positive interaction, your positive interaction with a non-problem person, and use that to feed their own you owe them or they deserve positive interaction mindset. And then that spirals into a totally different thing. These sorts of people, this subset, will start mimicking sorts of interactions with non-problem people that get your positive interactions. And then when you don't give them what you've given other people, and they think that they're doing the exact same thing, they're the same sort of people, they feel they deserve these things, they start throwing tantrums and escalating until you nip it in the bud immediately. That's why I block people all the time. There is no such thing as too early. That's something you need to learn. You need to learn that you don't owe people anything. They get the content they like. You get the numerical validation you want, provable, demonstrable validation you want, and that's it. That's the exchange. And I recommend you do content creation for tons of reasons, but learning this lesson is one of the most important. it teaches you skills you'll need and gives you perspective you'll need if you want to get higher in life. You don't deserve anything even if you should. It'll make you reevaluate what you think the word deserves means. It'll teach you boundaries. It'll teach you what really shitty people look like and manipulative people look like. It'll train your intuition and teach you to trust it. I am dead ass when I tell you you can learn to spot problem people from non-problem people with one sentence. But ultimately, I think the main reason these sorts of parasocial types bug me so much is I was one, and despite everything, underneath everything, I still am one. The reason you start on either the content creation path or the parasocialite path is that need for validation. And once upon a time, that's the way I started out, doing the latter. And even though I shifted paths, started down the content creation route, the more productive path, developing those skills, I still catch myself wanting to do to the creators I like what I hate when people do to me. Always beginning with mild validation hunting against targets I think I can get validation from or deserve validation from, and then in most cases it'll stop there, but in other cases, still, to this day, if I don't stop myself, feeling myself trying to get closer to these people. It's really disgusting and pathetic, and I hate that I have that urge. I love myself more than anybody else. I love myself more than anything else, but that is a part of myself that I really would rather I didn't have. And I want you to do content creation so you can learn these things. Because on that uber parasocial level, one day our little gang is going to need people who understand these things, who have developed these skills and can use them. And that's what I'm talking about when I say tricky. We aren't at a level we can handle parasocialization in a sophisticated way. And I think one of the reasons these negative parasocial types bug me so much is what's stopping them either from going down the content creation route instead, or in recognizing what they're doing and trying to check it. I can understand not being able to make it go away entirely. I hate that about myself. We just ranted about that. What makes you think it's okay to weasel into another person's life and start controlling them by pushing on them this idea that to this other person, you should be as important as this other person is to themselves? Who are you? Why should anyone care? And this is not a rhetorical question. What are you doing to make other people care other than existing loudly? What's killing me is this video doesn't even scratch the tip of the iceberg. In terms of my videos, I feel like this feels like it should be a good video. We have talked about something. To borrow a very old phrase that we haven't used in a long time, this video has a point, it makes its point, but it doesn't even come close to getting one of the tips of one of the icebergs. And you'll notice in this video, we didn't even scratch the tip. We noticed the tips, just the tips, of a few other icebergs, all wrapped up in this larger iceberg that is parasocialization. It's a mess. We did everything right in this video, and we still didn't even come close to capturing all that's there. In summary, because we have to stop if we don't. That's the other thing. If we wanted to keep talking at this point, we could keep talking, but we'd talk in circles because even though there is more out there, this is as far as we can go right now with words. And this is a point we don't usually reach in videos. We recognize there's more out there in this, but we don't understand it well enough to go any further. We can feel it, and that's about it for now. I'm not your friend. The YouTubers you watch aren't your friends. It's understandable, relatable to want validation in a world like this right now. It's hard not to, but don't get it in the least productive, most destructive way possible. Go the content creation route, learn all these valuable skills, go nowhere with your content creation. You'll learn the most that way. And it's really easy and cheap to get started. You can probably, at this point, do it all for free. Bad parasocialization feels like individual parasitism. Positive parasocialization, if there is such a thing, well, we can probably look back at the 20th century to understand what's happening there. I'm sure, well, we're still living in modernism with all modernism's trappings. We are not in a postmodern society, not even close. We'll cut it here. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.